Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the absolute most intense, high-stakes survival missions in all of ancient literature. We're talking about Apollonius of Rhodes' Argonautica. This isn't just a simple boat ride, this is a journey that literally pushes the limits of human endurance, throwing mortal men up against some of the most terrifying, unpredictable forces of the ancient world.
But before we map out the actual route, we've got to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. What happens when you cram ancient Greece's greatest heroes onto a single wooden ship? I mean, really, how does a crew of this magnitude survive giants and harpies and literal clashing rocks without completely destroying each other first? Honestly, it is a miracle the ship didn't just sink from the sheer weight of their combined egos.
Section 1. The Quest and the Crew. Let's start right at the beginning. Our story kicks off with a highly paranoid king named Peleus, a super ominous prophecy, and a fateful river crossing that sets the whole crazy thing into motion.
So, the crucial detail to know here is an oracle's warning to King Peleus. The warning was simple but weird. Beware a man wearing only one sandal. So when our main guy, Jason, loses his shoe in the freezing mud of a river and shows up at the king's banquet wearing only one sandal, well, Peleus instantly recognizes his doom. To get rid of this walking red flag, the king immediately sends Jason on a seemingly impossible, deadly voyage across the sea to retrieve the legendary Golden Fleece. He totally thinks it's a guaranteed death sentence.
But Jason doesn't go it alone. And this isn't just your average sailing crew. We are talking about an ancient Avengers-style squad. It's arguably the original blueprint for every superhero team-up we see in movies today. Every single hero brings a totally unique superpower to the Argo, which, by the way, is a miraculous ship built with a little help from the goddess Athena. So, you've got Jason leading, albeit a bit reluctantly, Heracles bringing completely unmatched brute force, Orpheus charming nature itself with his music, Polydeuces with his lethal boxing skills, Tiphys as the master helmsman, and Zetes and Colchis who literally have wings.
This epic route essentially builds our roadmap for the journey. You can kind of treat each stop on this timeline as a distinct level in a mythological video game that the Argonauts have to clear just to survive. From their departure at Pagasae all the way over to the coast of Phineus, every single stop forces this crew to adapt to entirely new and usually lethal challenges.
Moving into Section 2, Lemnos and a Tragic Mistake. The very first major tests for the crew actually aren't the giant monsters you might expect. Instead, they face dangerous distractions and some incredibly deadly misunderstandings.
Take their very first stop at the island of Lemnos. This is a city entirely populated by women who, driven by a terrible curse, had ruthlessly slain all their husbands and all the men on the island. But instead of fighting the Argonauts, Queen Hypsipyle offers them the throne and a life of absolute luxury. Now today we might expect flawless, unwavering heroes, right? But these ancient warriors are incredibly human. They almost completely abandon the entire mission right then and there to just chill on the island. It actually takes Heracles aggressively shaming them and refusing to leave the ship himself to finally get them to snap out of it and get back on the water. The next stop, though, is far more tragic, and it brilliantly illustrates the jarring emotional whiplash of the ancient world. During the day, the Argonauts land and have this wonderfully friendly feast with the local king, Cyzicus, and his people. But after they set sail, a fierce storm blows them right back to the exact same shore in the middle of the night. In the pitch black, neither side recognizes the other. They engage in a brutal, chaotic battle, and the Argonauts unwittingly slaughter the very hosts who had just welcomed them hours earlier, including the young king himself. It's a massive, sobering reality check for the whole crew. Which brings us to Section 3, Losing the Heavyweights. This journey starts taking a massive physical and emotional toll on everyone, and very quickly that catches up with them, leading to the loss of their absolute most powerful weapon. A whole cascading sequence of disaster strikes when they land at Sissus. First, Heracles, just rowing way too hard with that massive strength of his, literally snaps his oar in half, so they pull over to replace it. While they're stopped, his young squire Hylas goes to draw some water and ends up getting pulled into a spring by a love-struck water nymph. Well, Heracles goes into an absolute frenzy searching the deep woods for him. In all the confusion and the urgency to catch a good wind, the Argo actually sails away, completely stranding their strongest hero on shore. A massive fight breaks out on deck when they realize what they've done, but then a sea deity emerges from the waves to confirm that actually it is Heracles' fate to return to his own labors. So Jason is now forced to lead this crew without his heavy hitter. Let's look at Section 4, Boxers, Harpies, and Seers. Losing Heracles completely flips the dynamic.
Without him there to just smash every single problem with his club, the rest of the crew really has to step up and face these increasingly terrifying supernatural boss battles totally on their own.
The very next stop brings them face to face with the Bebrycians, ruled by King Amycus. This guy has a brutal law. Any visitor to his land must box him to the death. It's a classic heavyweight mismatch. Amycus is this monstrous, arrogant giant relying on brutal, heavy downward swings. Meanwhile, our Argonaut Polydeuces is youthful but incredibly swift. Polydeuces uses his superior speed to dodge a massive, lethal blow, swerving his head at the very last millisecond, and strikes the king right above the ear, shattering his skull. Just like that, he instantly turns the tide of survival, proving that pure skill and tactics can totally overcome raw size.
After that, reaching the coast of Thracia, they encounter a truly pathetic sight: the blind, aging prophet Phineus. He had been punished by Zeus for revealing way too much of the future to mortals, and his punishment was perpetual starvation. Every single time he tries to eat a meal, these hideous winged harpies swoop down from the clouds to snatch and ruin his food. Phineus is basically a living skeleton at this point. But he promises the crew that if they save him from this torture, he will give them the literal cheat codes for the rest of their terrifying journey.
So, the Argonauts set a trap. They use Phineus as bait with a nice fresh meal. The second those harpies swoop down, Zetes and Calais, our winged heroes, draw their swords and launch into the air. Using their winged feet, they chase these loathsome monsters high across the sky. They are just about to strike them down when the goddess Iris steps in, swearing a divine oath that the beasts will never bother Phineus again. The heroes successfully free the prophet, which allows him to finally eat, and more importantly for us, deliver his vital instructions.
All right, Section 5, Surviving the Clashing Rocks. True to his word, Phineus gives them their reward. He hands the crew a survival guide for what is definitely their most terrifying obstacle yet: the Cynean Rocks, also known as the Clashing Rocks.
You guys, this is an incredibly tense moment. These aren't just normal rocks, they are massive sea cliffs that constantly slam together, crushing absolutely anything caught between them. Phineus's instructions are terrifyingly simple. First, release a dove. If the bird makes it through, wait for the rocks to clash and begin to pull apart. Then row for your lives. And the crew follows this to the letter. They watch in absolute horror as the dove darts through the canyon, the rocks slamming together and clipping just the very tip of the bird's tail feathers.
As the massive rocks open up again, Tiphys the helmsman screams at them to row. The ancient text describes the sheer terror of this moment so perfectly. It says, "And the foam leapt up in a mass like a cloud. Awful was the thunder of the sea." A massive arched wave suddenly rises up, threatening to just crush the ship from above, before it rolls under them and sweeps the Argo right into the terrifying canyon of the rocks.
They are rowing with absolutely everything they have, but the current starts pulling them backward. Right as the rocks are rushing back together to crush them into splinters, they get a divine assist. The goddess Athena herself physically pushes the Argo through the receding rocks. And because a mortal ship finally passed through alive, the gods' decree actually roots the clashing rocks in place permanently forever. The heroes just collapse onto their benches, utterly exhausted but alive, as they finally burst into the open waters of the Black Sea. Section 6, Approaching the Golden Fleece. So they've survived the worst the sea can throw at them. But as they close in on their final destination of Colchis, they run into bizarre cultures, deadly birds, and a stroke of just incredible luck.
First up, they hit the island of Ares. Here, they're attacked from the sky by thousands of birds that can actually shoot their sharp feathers down like arrows. After one of the heroes, Oileus, takes a hit to the shoulder, they remember a tactic once used by Heracles. Once again, using a brilliant tactical strategy instead of just raw brute force, they put on their plumed helmets and lock their massive shields together over their heads. This creates a solid metal roof, like tiles on a house. The deadly feathers just bounce right off, and by shouting and clashing their swords against the shields, they manage to scare the whole flock away. Right after that, a crazy storm hits and they stumble across 4 men clinging to a shattered wooden beam in the water. By pure chance, or let's be real, divine intervention, these happen to be the shipwrecked sons of Phrixus. Why does that matter? Because Phrixus is the guy who originally brought the Golden Fleece to Colchis in the first place. The Argonauts rescue them from the water, and in return, these grandsons not only know the exact way to King Aeetes' palace, but they know exactly what the king is hiding. And what he's hiding is the stuff of nightmares. As the rescued men pledge their help, they warn Jason about the impossibly powerful Colchian army. But even worse than the army is the thing guarding the fleece itself. The text describes it perfectly. So huge a serpent keeps guard round and about it, deathless and sleepless. This is a massive, nightmarish dragon born from the blood of a defeated titan. And as we leave the Argonauts staring down this impossible reality, we have to ask ourselves, after losing their greatest warrior and barely surviving the journey across the sea, how on earth will Jason and this battered crew possibly steal the Golden Fleece?